Who doesn't know about Coke, right? They're a corporate giant and an industry leader. But do you know about the time they failed badly? It was in the early 80s. Coke decided to change their recipe and they introduced the new Coke. It was different. Coke spent millions of dollars developing it. They conducted taste tests with over 200,000 people, and the tasters loved it. So they released the new Coke in April 1985. They were confident the new Coke would re-energize their brand. Well, it didn't. People revolted. They wanted their old Coke back. Coke spent over $4 million in research and development of the new Coke. They lost another $30 million in new Coke backstock because nobody would drink it. By the way, that $30 million is $114 million today. So what happened? 80 days later, they brought the old Coke back. 80 days. So what does the story of Coke really teach us about change? Hi, I'm excited to see you today. I'm Kassie Gram, a certified change management practitioner and Vice President of Sales for Public Knowledge. Today, I'm going to highlight the profound impact that people have on how we implement technology. I will share with you ways you can improve adoption and increase the success of even your most challenging implementation. Does this sound familiar? Is this your organization's typical approach? That's kind of how I run my family change. I can tell you one thing, change is constant. Let's take the last year, for instance. Remember when you used to go to the office? Well, now we huddle in our closets, hoping our kids stop crying and our dogs stop barking long enough to just get through slide 5 of the presentation. Please just slide 5. We used to hug, now we elbow bump, air hug, air high five. We used to get emails from strangers across the world requesting that we send them money so that we could get them out of imminent peril. Well, now we get spoofed emails from maybe our CEO requesting that we send wire transfers immediately to get him out of something that some sort of sticky situation he's gotten himself into. We all know hope is not a strategy for change. So let's make sure we're still on the same page. Just as any other planning efforts for your technology deployment, OCM requires planning, intention, and OCM must be monitored and controlled, just like your project management. In fact, data shows that projects with effective change management practices are 5 to 6 times more successful than projects that did not address the people side of change effectively. We do have data demonstrating the correlation between change management effectiveness and projects that meet or exceed their objectives. Using this data from 2,700 change practitioners, we can show that projects with excellent change management in place are 6 times more likely to meet objectives than those with poor change management. Even those projects using good change management principles are 5 times more likely to meet project objectives. It seems like a no-brainer. So let's talk about that. This is the important question to ask yourself. How are your people critical to your technology's success? And while that may seem like a simple answer, they use it and you've spent an inordinate amount of time trying to design the usability into your system or your implementation or your tools, but really, how critical are they to actually helping you implement it as well? Let's think back about New Coke. Why was it such a huge failure? What if Coke had enlisted change champions to promote the benefits of the new recipe? What if Coke had just told consumers why they had to change the recipe? What if, and this is controversial, what if they had just slowed down the launch? What if they communicated about it better? Perhaps established better two-way checkpoints with their consumers? Structured OCM practices shows that the more we engage our people in change and show them what's in it for them, or the with them, that rolls off your tongue, the greater our combined success. If Coke had used OCM, would they have saved millions and avoided the old Coke, new Coke saga? Now think about your change. Consider the impact to your users. Be very intentional and clearly and carefully identify ways to show what's in it for them. And also identify what's in it for me may not be what's in it for you, may not be what's in it for our leadership. And that's the important distinction. Make sure that you identify what's in it for all of your users and help demonstrate that and demonstrate the benefits. Okay. So I know you're thinking at this point, it's been really fun learning about Coke and their failures with their new Coke launch, but when are you gonna finally give me something I can actually take action on? Okay, so here we go. The prevailing feedback I hear from my clients is that they wish they had started OCM earlier. Not one of my clients have ever said, yeah, I probably could have waited just a little bit, especially to think about organizational readiness. I mean, I'm just in testing now. So let me share a story with you. Last year, I had the pleasure of speaking on a panel with two of my clients. They were talking about their lessons learned from implementing each of their over $100 million healthcare claims processing systems. One client introduced OCM principles after they had a really difficult launch. And based on feedback from that client, the other client hired us 1 year prior to the launch. And I will tell you, in this discussion about lessons learned, both clients couldn't stress enough that they both wish they had started their OCM planning at the same time as their project management initiation, way back in the early stages of a 5-year implementation. So better yet, OCM planning happens while you're writing the business case. It gives you the opportunity to really think through where and why people may resist the change or where it will impact them the hardest. And then you'll find opportunities to invite them to the table early. It is critical to start folding in your approach and activities early in order to avoid costly mistakes in design and implementation. We all know that, but thinking about it from the with them point of view is really the important distinction to make from standard project management or even systems or implementation design. For those of you who are in the middle of your deployment or even in user acceptance testing, I do really advocate that there is no such thing as too late. It's really important to review your communication and implementation strategies throughout, particularly as it comes down to the users. And then you realign them with what you're hearing from the users. So the one-time training that you may have scheduled may not be enough for all of your staff. For your highly technical or already your security team, absolutely. They just may need to have one training to learn the new ins and outs of the new technology that you're implementing versus your business people, policy people, they have no idea. They know that you told them not to click on an email and that's about it. Meet your users where they are and you will see tremendous gains. Second point I'd like to make is that effective change management must start at the top of the organization. Strong leadership is the single most important element for successful organizational change. We understand that from an implementation standpoint, but also from the OCM, the change management aspect. Be sure to work with your leadership and your project teams to ensure that there is alignment between the two. And this includes alignment on individual roles, organizational structure, and business processes that are needed to support any technology transformation. It is critical that sponsors, leaders, and managers are all equipped with the tools and knowledge to help them lead your organization through any change. And this starts with educating them on change management principles. This also includes training and real-time coaching. And this real-time coaching helps them identify barriers to change, as well as providing them with tools and techniques to put in their toolbox to effectively support staff that may be resistant to the change. And really the last point I want to make on this is that leading OCM from the top is more than just an executive bullet point during reporting out or communication about a project. The most effective leaders engage personally with staff to demonstrate the benefits of the change, to show that they believe in the future state of the change, and that they're digging in and helping remove the barriers and advocating for the change. One other thing is keep it real, which brings us to the communication. Communication is critical, we know that. Successful adoption increases when you involve staff along the way. And OCM communication is more than just project status reporting. It is stakeholder management, but also keeping in mind, again, the what's in it for them, the WIFM. But it sets users' expectations. As I said earlier, be sure to keep it real. Make the future state tangible so that the staff better understand the changes that will be coming. And this is done through clear, timely, and accurate communications about project progress. This also includes how and when users will be impacted. It is also important to highlight the benefits the technology will bring to individuals. Communication is most effective when bidirectional, meaning you and leadership are spending equal amount of time listening, and then using that information to adjust your strategies and messaging, and even timing to meet the user's needs. As part of communication, we recommend developing a change agent network. And I know what you're thinking. No, I'm not telling you to go find the Jason Bourne of change. Change agents are not super spies enlisted to take out those with bad attitudes or find pockets of users planning to foil your implementation. But change agents are staff from within your organization that do have a realistic view of day-to-day work. And this makes them powerful because they're empathetic to how changes will impact individuals and teams. Change agents must reflect every level and every role in the organization, and they're usually go-to staff that are already respected by their peers. I've also seen some of my clients find that particular group or that representative from the particular area that may be most resistant, and helping get them really well educated on the changes. Once developed, this network of trained change agents, all right, that does sound like it's important, but they will help you coordinate and build bridges between leaders and staff. Again, if you identify someone that is a resistant agent and you flip them, then they will then become one of your strongest advocates for the change. Change agents also act as early adopters and champions for the project, and that helps them, it helps you break down resistance and build excitement for the project among their peers. Change agents often become proficient in their change roles, and we see time and time again that once they've been really changed, or once they've been trained and are an effective change manager, then they can be used for future transformation projects. So how do we know OCM is working? If we don't measure it, did it happen? Do we know we were successful? Metrics tell us whether the desired transformation has occurred. And in my experience with implementing technology over the last 20 years, the system or implementation is always ready for the people, far before the people are willing or ready to use it. Waiting for users is not an option with cybersecurity deployments, though. There's too much at risk. But do keep in mind that the rapid deployments impact other critical performance measures that must be understood and communicated proactively. Otherwise, you will likely see old habits and workarounds creep up. Use of and monitoring of metrics will demonstrate whether and where you may encounter potential roadblocks to your implementation. I recommend metrics that are quantifiable indicators of both technology readiness and user readiness to do their jobs in a new way, and sometimes in a vastly new way. Be careful to craft your metrics and ensure that they dive into specific readiness factors and identify the degree to which they are in place prior to deployment. And be sure to establish a baseline to measure progress throughout your change. And I wouldn't be doing a good job of helping you if I didn't offer some examples, like find out if users are even aware of your change and make sure that they are aware of why it's happening. Know if users understand the change and how it impacts them personally. And as your go live approaches or your launch approaches, track the number of users trained versus the number of users that are confident in their ability to complete the job functions after the implementation or deployment. Use OCM-driven assessments, so focusing on the people, and use that to gather your data and align them with critical milestones throughout your project implementation. This will allow you to continually monitor user readiness and their ability to adapt to the changes. And finally, many of your projects are part of a long-term transformation effort. So be sure to include some short duration activities that solve important problems and demonstrate successful impacts that you are able to make along the way. So thinking back to my first point about starting early, when you integrate OCM with project management, initiation, and planning, you can thoughtfully build in milestones for success, and you can actually create those opportunities to celebrate. Use those celebrations and recognition to reinforce your change. Without being mindful about this, oftentimes people will revert back to their old ways. It is really important to build in reinforcement opportunities to change the culture around how technology is used and change the culture about why the changes are being made. In fact, oftentimes, as painful as a change or an implementation started, if it's continually reinforced a year or 2 years later, you may not even remember that you had to change, or you'll joke about, oh, do you remember the old way we used to do this? There's no way I would go back to that. Watch for the achievement of milestones and identify early successes, even if small. I know this is hard to do, but make sure you take pause between activities and look back and mark the successes that you have had. We've all been to the company pizza party after a big milestone, but let's use these opportunities, even if they are virtual right now, but use them to recognize individual contributions and do so in a way that makes them comfortable. Because, not everyone likes public recognition, but they do like to be recognized. I'm sure you all have good ideas for celebrations, so I don't need to talk to you about how what your parties could look like. But make sure that they include an authentic moment to thank a group or an individual. It's really powerful to invite and engage one of your leaders to visit with the group and thank them in person, or even call a small group meeting and have them interact one-on-one if it's not something that's usually done. It goes a long way. Be sure to include project sponsors in any celebration. One of my clients' leadership team actually hosted a staff lunch after their large implementation. The leadership team, about 5 of them, all dressed up in chef's hats and aprons, and they served lunch to the staff. I thought it was pretty cool. 4 years later, staff still tell stories about the CEO in his chef's hat and frilly apron. Another idea, and when it's safe again, is to participate in community events as a team. Or even set up a brag board in a public area, a team channel, team site, intranet site that's open to your whole organization. And don't be shy. Be sure to share your success stories and your wins. Everybody loves a good win story. Celebrating your successes increases morale and builds support among those making the change. Even when finding funds is really difficult, these celebrations don't really need to break the bank. Truly, a simple thank you from a supervisor can go a long way. Let's be honest, even you will likely need these moments as much as the rest of your organization. If I leave you with one nugget today, it is this. Never underestimate the power of communication. Communicate early, communicate often. Communicate in different ways. using different tools and different techniques. And perhaps most importantly, listen. Listen to what your users have to say, and be sure you find an appropriate way to respond. The bottom line is, cybersecurity is changing rapidly. You must incorporate your users in that change or you will fail. You do not want to be the new Coke.